University of Arkansas Honors College is hosting a panel on the Hamas-Israel war, an event that some say is problematic and features anti-Israel and anti-Semitic professors in the university's King Fahd Middle East Studies Center. Several Jewish faculty and students have raised objections to this event. Joining us to talk about this today is Greene, a senior research fellow in the Center for Education Policy at the Heritage Foundation. Thank you so much for being with us again today.
Thank you for having me on. I should also note I was on the faculty of the University of Arkansas for 16 years until 2 years ago. So I'm familiar with the situation there as well.
And that's why I'm glad that you decided to join us to talk about this event. It's called a Pulse discussion, and this has been going on with the Honors College for several years now, but this is one that I think has caught the eye of a lot of people, especially considering the climate right now in the U.S., across Europe. Talk to us about this and the two professors who will be on this panel.
Sure. So, the university wants to hold events to discuss current issues, which I understand why they would want to do that. And they've done that in the past. The problem with this event is that the two presenters the two panelists they have for this event are both among the most radical members of the faculty, the most hostile to Israel and the most hostile to Jews. And so to hold an event that's incredibly imbalanced on a volatile topic is irresponsible and potentially dangerous. We are seeing on campuses around the country that students are getting mobilized by radical elements and begin to engage in some very dangerous activity, threatening other students, physically assaulting them. We did see at a protest last night in Los Angeles that an older Jewish man was killed at a protest by a pro-Hamas protester who beat him on the head with a megaphone. And so these things can get out of control. And the university, while it has a responsibility to educate its students about current issues, it also has a responsibility to do so in a scholarly way and a balanced way. And neither of those things, I think, are present here.
Well, in the release from the Honors College, they say that these two professors have extensive time in the Middle East and have written and taught about the conflict in this region and abroad.
That's true. They do have extensive time and experience in the Middle East. So does Hamas. But we wouldn't want to have a panel with two Hamas representatives. That would be a bad idea. And while these people are not Hamas representatives, they're just a hop, skip, and jump away. So they may say they don't have sympathy for Hamas, but they regularly do. And they certainly have outright hostility towards Israel. Just as an example, Ted Swedenborg, who's one of the professors who's presenting, just yesterday quote tweeted a video of a child at a protest angrily shouting, "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free." For those of you who aren't familiar, that's a genocidal slogan calling for the elimination of all Jews in the land of Israel and the elimination of the state of Israel itself. He quote tweeted that with 5 faces with heart eyes, just show how much he loves a child chanting that. So he clearly has some radical inclinations in that he would wish to promote a child shouting the genocidal slogan.
You know, I'm old enough to remember, right? That's what you see people say on social media. I'm old enough to remember a time when several years ago, those that were part of this woke mob would say even just words were violence. Right. And if you just spoke things into, if you just said certain things or even just that caused harm. And that's part of that DEI equity, that all of that, which we can talk about in a little bit. But now we are seeing actual anti-Semitism, actual words of violence. What you're talking about, genocide, being posted by professors and chancellors, professors, and across college campuses all across the country. It is crickets.
Right.
It is happening, and no one is really saying anything about it anymore. Where are these people who were so threatened by words?
Right.
Where are they standing up for these Jews who are being? It doesn't even make sense to me now.
Sure. So it is strange to see people who said, words were violence, suddenly discover that there are free speech absolutists, and now anything can be said, including threats of genocide and physical assault and so on. That hypocrisy is alarming and strange, and suggests that they're insincere and might have other motivations. But also, the truth is, speech does have effects. And that's why universities as educational institutions have to be careful with the speech that they give official platforms and resources to. So the question isn't whether Professors Swedenborg and Gordon are allowed to stand on the street corner and shout their nonsense. They are allowed to do it. They can say whatever nonsense they like on the street corner. The question is, does the university have an obligation, or is it even responsible for the university to give these two guys a platform by giving them a room, by giving them promotion, and giving them official sanction as a university event to promote their nonsense? Now, I do suspect, by the way, given that critical attention is being drawn to this, that they may behave themselves more at this event than they do in other writings and forums. And if they do, good for us that we managed to shine the spotlight on them and make them more responsible. But it doesn't mean that they are restrained all the time. And I wouldn't be shocked if they slip, or if students slip, because these people do have a hard time controlling themselves. They are kind of rage-filled, and that rage spills out on a regular basis.
Let's talk about Jewish faculty and students that have reached out to university officials. We received a copy from a letter that was sent to Chancellor Robinson and Provost Martin, and this was penned by Professor Robert Kostrel. He's Professor of Education Reform and Economics, and he beautifully lays out the problems of this panel. And one problem that he talks about is, he said, it appears this panel violates the state of Arkansas's legal commitment to educate, not indoctrinate, let alone the university's professional ethics. Let's first just break that down very briefly, if you will. That was an executive order passed by Governor Sarah Sanders.
Right. So again, the university has a professional responsibility, and under an executive order, a legal responsibility to educate and not indoctrinate, which means that they should have balanced programming. Now, I have to say that I don't think the main avenue of objection to this event is a legal one. I don't think the courts are likely to intervene in some way, nor should they, probably. Instead, this is really a matter of scholarly obligation by the leaders of the university to fulfill their responsibilities by having qualified scholars with balanced programming to educate students, as opposed to activism to whip them up into a dangerous fervor.
What about reason to believe that the framing of this panel violates the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance? So
the state of Arkansas has adopted the IHRA, the
IHRA.
Yeah, the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism. And in that definition, anti-Zionism, that is calling for the elimination of the state of Israel or a double standard treatment of Israel, constitutes anti-Semitism. So one can be critical of Israel without being an anti-Semite. Many Israelis are critical of the actions of their government, just as many people in the United States can be critical of the actions of their government without being anti-American. The same is true. You can be critical of Israel without being anti-Semitic, but it crosses the line at a certain point. And that point, according to the IHRA definition, is when you call for the elimination of the state of Israel. That is, if you wish to deny Jews the right of self-determination that is afforded every other people. or if you apply a double standard to Israel that you wouldn't apply to other countries. That is, if you say the United States can defend itself against a surprise attack at Pearl Harbor, but Israel can't defend itself against a surprise attack. If you want to apply a double standard, that is evidence of anti-Semitism.
Is this event an indication that the University of Arkansas is out of touch with our communities and Arkansas as a whole?
I think it is. I mean, look, there's good news here. The good news is that the people of Arkansas are mostly very decent people who see mass slaughter, rape, and kidnapping as horrific and are quite sympathetic with the people of Israel in defending themselves against Hamas. And so this event is totally contrary to what they wish for themselves or for their children. But it's the same kind of problem that we're seeing in K-12 education, where a small number of radicals have hijacked our institutions, our schools, our K-12 schools, and our universities to try to advance their radical agenda by foisting it on our kids. And the people of Arkansas don't want that. They want their schools to serve their purposes, to raise their children in the way they prefer with the values that they hold dear. And the same goes true for our universities. I mean, we have more latitude with universities because those children are now young adults. But nonetheless, we don't send our children off to university and pay large amounts of money to have them turned into radicals who march around campus chanting genocidal slogans. We don't want that. And a university that can't figure out a way to hold that in check is a university that's undermining the preferences of the vast majority of Arkansans.
Okay, so how do we get this under control?
So the most important thing we can do is to put funding in jeopardy. I mean, the truth is, irresponsibility is fueled by excess money. Universities cry poverty, but they're actually awash in cash. And because they're awash in cash, they are reckless and do dangerous things. Sort of like a spoiled child. Think of them as spoiled children. And, you know, if you threaten to cut their allowance, it's amazing how much better behaved they might become. And I think the same is generally true for universities. So we're seeing this with donor strikes at private universities like Harvard and Penn, where donors are threatening to cut off money if the universities don't get this in line. But I think at state universities, including University of Arkansas, I think the state legislature needs to look at their appropriation and condition it on responsible behavior on the part of the state university. Now, that doesn't mean that the university should be censoring speech, nor interfering with academic freedom. That's not what I'm talking about at all. But at the same time, they need to have university-endorsed programming that is balanced and educational and scholarly and not radical indoctrination. And they also, frankly, need to have a more balanced faculty. And part of the reason why you have such an imbalanced panel at this event is that the only people they have employed in the King Fahd Center for Middle East Studies are people who are virulently anti-Israel. They don't have any even lukewarm to Israel people on their faculty, and so they have no one who could speak to the other side in the as experts in the employ of the university. Now, if the university felt obliged to have this event, they could seek an expert from outside the university, but the fact that they don't have one at the university is part of the problem. And so senior administration can ensure more balanced hiring. And if they fail to do so, then perhaps they don't deserve taxpayer money as much as they currently receive.
We did contact the university. So far, we have not received a response. But I do feel, though, that if we were to receive a response, that they would continue to say that these are faculty experts, and that in fact one of them is Jewish, and that would be, I believe his name is Joel Gordon, I believe.
Yes.
So
right. So I mean, just to speak to that, just as Hamas hides behind civilian shields, right? They build their terror tunnels underneath hospitals and apartment buildings and mosques and schools with civilians in them, to protect themselves from attack. so too, anti-Semites have Jew shields. That is, they find someone with some Jewish lineage who they can then prop up and say, see, that person says what we're saying, and therefore what we're saying must not be anti-Semitic. And essentially, Joel Gordon is their Jew shield. The truth is, he has virtually no connection. It has no connection to the Jewish community of Northwest Arkansas at all. I can tell you, I'm personally active in the Jewish community of Northwest Arkansas for 2 decades, and he's never once shown up at any event, any communal activity of any kind, no weddings, no funerals, no bar mitzvahs. He's not there. And the reason is because he doesn't identify as a Jew, and he's not active as a Jew. I'm not denying that he may have a parent who is Jewish, but that doesn't make him someone who identifies with the fate of the Jewish people, nor does it prevent what he's saying from being hostile to the Jewish people and being anti-Semitic. So I think just as civilian shields are using a good thing to protect a bad thing, the fact that Joel Gordon can claim to be Jewish is a good thing that is used to hide a bad thing, which is the anti-Semitic things that he and Swedenborg say.
Before we let you go, I wanted to just get your opinion on what type of message do you think this event is sending to those students or faculty who may have a connection to those in Israel?
So, it's interesting because I can compare it to what happened after the election of Trump in 2016. I was a department head at the university at the time, and at that time, we received a message that we were supposed to take out our professors, staff, and students who were foreign nationals for lunch at university expense to reassure them that the university cared about them and would keep them safe. And I had to take out a bunch of people in my department to a Thai restaurant at university expense, at taxpayer expense, I should add.
Yeah.
And listen to them talk about how they felt unsafe or whatever because of the election of Donald Trump. And the contrast in the reaction of the university to that event to right now, where Jews are literally unsafe, actually being killed. There's no, lunch fund where all the people connected to Israel are being taken out for lunch and reassured that the university cares about them. Instead, the university is organizing this event to signal to them that they don't care about them. Now, I'm not saying that it was a good idea to do either. I actually would prefer that the university not take anyone out for lunch to coddle them and make them feel safe.
Right.
I think that both would be inappropriate use of taxpayer money.
Yeah.
But the contrast in the response shows how the university actually cares about some people and actively doesn't care about others. And that is also a problem that needs to be corrected if the university is going to serve public purposes in Arkansas. And the only way really to get the university's attention is to talk about their funding from the state legislature and from donors. I mean, there are also big donors to the University of Arkansas who could say, look, if you want my money going forward, you would better address these problems.
Absolutely. Anything else you'd like to add before we let you go?
No, I think the one other thing that's worth pointing out maybe is the nature of anti-Semitism. Just a little bit point on this, which is that I think we like to think of anti-Semitism as a function of ignorance. That is, that people don't know things, and that's why they hate Jews. And if only they were better educated and knew more things, they would like Jews more. And I think that's it's understandable why we're drawn to that explanation of anti-Semitism, but it's mistaken. So there are some very well-educated and very knowledgeable people who hate Jews. And I think Professors Sweden and Gordon are among them. And they, instead of using education to help people understand each other and like each other better, they're using education to foment hate and get people to hate Jews more, which is how you can in fact see anti-Semitism increase with higher education levels. So it depends on what the content of the education is, which is why it's so important for the university to pay some attention to the content of its education with respect to the hatred of various groups. And look, I think the other thing to note is that this isn't just about Jews. This is about Christians and patriots, because the this war on Israel and the radicals marching around campus don't just hate Jews. They hate America. When they say we're for decolonization, they're talking about decolonizing America.
Right.
They're not talking just about something in the Middle East. They're talking about here. And when they say that we need to justice by any means necessary and no justice, no peace, they're talking about violence here, not there. And so if we don't take care of this problem both here and there, we're going to see it get worse here.
Absolutely. Yeah. Wonderful insight, Jay. Always really appreciate you coming in to talk to
us. Thanks for having me. I mean, look, I wish it were for happier occasions, like the passage of a fantastic school choice bill in Arkansas. We have lots of good things to talk about. But there are times when some really bad things are happening, and I'm so glad you're here and Conduit is here to talk about them.
Well, this needs to be brought to light, and we'll be following it. Thank you, Jay.
Thank you.